All right, so now I'd like to talk briefly about some subtler affect of Kuzushi, some subtler ways that it can be delivered with the man. When we're hooked up with somebody's body, and he's got a hold of me, or I've got a hold of him, or we're just touching, we can just make it even lighter, just like just a touch. We're just in contact, but we're not really in a pressure relationship. We're not trying to make a lot of firmness here. And you do something like you shift weight all onto one foot. Right now, I've just put all my weight on my left foot. He can tell you right now, all the weight in his body, even though I haven't affected him at the hands, has shifted over onto the mirror side for his body. So just by shifting weight, I'm going to take my weight to my right foot now. I let my right knee bend slightly, and everything rolls over onto his mirror side. Because the mere act of touching, just lightly linking up, not even a bunch of pressure, but the mere act of touching starts affecting the mirror neurons in the person you're dealing with's body. Their center of gravity and your center of gravity are having to get in tandem, because throughout evolutionary time, people have found that if we get hooked up for whatever reason and we're walking along together, that we have to start adjusting for the fact that we are connected. Otherwise, you have way too much off balance happening spontaneously and people falling over. And so it's been found that once people have contact, once there is physical contact with each other, anything I do with my center of gravity, even if I don't make a bunch of pressure relationship, we could just be hooked together like little kids with their pinkies, like the little pinky thing. If I shift my weight to my outside leg at this point, even though there's very little traction here, suddenly you get an effect over there. Now it's more than that, because that's just weight shifting. That's just dumping weight into one foot or the other, shifting. Let's say we take a subtler thing. We take the same kind of light control, same kind of light touch, just very delicate, not a bunch of pressure here at the hands, and we can have it even, so we're both a little asymmetrical, one up, one down each, so there's no trickiness in terms of, well, he's pulling with one and pushing with the other. Well, so am I. So it's all very even. And now, rather than just shifting the weight, I'm not only going to shift the weight, but I'm also going to coil from the hip. I'm going to take the bend of my hip right here, and in this case, I'm going to close it. I'm going to close the hip all the way from the hip socket down before I put my weight on that foot. And he can tell you, as I close this hip, so you see my heel turning toward the camera, and put weight on it, not only does his weight shift, but torsion starts happening in his body, doesn't it? He's starting to twist. And so you not only get an affect of putting him onto one foot, but you get a twisting function. That happens just the same if I open from the hip. So if the hip socket opens, and we have this very light touch, I open the hip and place weight on that foot, again, he can feel, you feel the body wanting to turn. Yeah. So the torsioning that occurs at the level of the hip, opening and closing, starts getting mirrored unconsciously too. Very little funny effects here can start affecting him. And again, it's important to realize that the activity that's affecting him is all coming out of the hip actions. The arms are just flopsy bunny arms. The arms are just loose. You'd like to keep them as passive as if they were rope, as if they're just tied off ropes to each other. They're just connections, but they're just, here, he can just hold them as lightly as he wants. So just delicate, light little, like you're holding a baby. So very, very delicate. Now, the next one I'm going to try is we've talked about shifting weight, but if I don't shift the weight on my feet, but I just take my hips and I roll the hip under, it causes my knees to bend slightly, and see them start to tip over. Isn't that weird? Mm-hmm. Now, if I try to just pull down with my arms, that sends a whole bunch of signals to his nervous system. He can feel that coming and brace against it and lock his body against it. But it's odd, when the arms are relaxed like ropes, and I just tuck my hip, the signal going to his body is like he doesn't get it. It's a mystery signal. There's something going on, but his mirror neurons can't read it effectively until it's too late. The activity of my hip changing, tucking under slightly, like this, the hip rolling in slightly, causing my knees to reflex and bend a little, causes a body drop to happen, but also causes a vector of pulling that is very subtle because it's not coming out of the arms. I'm not pulling with my arms this way. Because as I pull this way, yeah, he can, yeah, you feel that? You can, or you can pull back. Yeah, exactly. But what he winds up feeling is I don't know, it's kind of indescribable. And it comes on in a subtle sort of way. It's like it's beneath the threshold of his normal reactive process. The more that you can affect the man and create Kuzushi beneath his threshold of sensory awareness, the better. Because it's like you get to have an invisible thing acting on him. But it's not invisible, it's just subtle. And over time you can learn to exploit the subtlety. Another affect that comes into this is kind of interesting, is what happens in the shoulder girdle. Because how we hold the shoulders relative to the arms being relaxed can also affect him. We have our arms out here, my shoulders are at their normal torsion and the normal extension. The arms are again flopsy and loose like ropes, and then I just change the shoulders. And by changing the shoulder, I just drop them. I just sort of drop the activity from the shoulder blades down. And it creates a dropping function as well. And so without changing my hips, without bending my knees, without dropping my center of gravity, I go from, if I were to exaggerate it, if my normal shoulders are up here like this, I'm just dropping them down like this. And that's exaggerated. I normally don't walk around like this, but I'm just taking the normal tension that's there and then just dropping. I'm feeling the change at my shoulder blade. But my arms, again, are just loose and relaxed. So these are all functions because they affect his body from your center line of mass, from your hips and your shoulder sockets, the center of your being is affecting him, not parts of your periphery. There are effects that happen at the periphery as well that are very interesting. There's times when, as he comes to grasp, you change the grasp. You make a little alteration. As he comes to grip, you change the grip. You make a little alteration in his gripping function, just as it tries to lock down. You can affect that way as well, and those are a whole nother study of subtle activities that you can do to apply, but those are a little more obvious. The ones that are coming, just downstairs, it all happened at my feet, all happened at my feet, all happened at my feet. Notice I'm not taking any steps. Everything that was happening to him was happening as a process of little opening and closing of the hips, shifting of the weight, turning of the hips, and rolling of the hips with the arms relaxed. Finally, he took a big step, and I had to step on behind him. But basically, the majority of the Kuzushi I just executed right there was very subtle, very difficult for the man's sensory nervous system to account for. And the more he's in a state of sensory deprivation, the better for you. You give him the lightest touch possible, you give him the least amount of signal coming out of the arms and the upper body, and you let that effect happen center to center. And that's nice and subtle Kuzushi. So thank you very much. Good.